Question. And the photograph on the right? The tattoo on her right index finger, the sh with SHHH and dot, was on the right hand index finger. Okay, based on the condition of the decedent as she was removed from the front trunk of the Tesla, was there a face where you could make out any facial features? No. There was quite a bit of decomposition to where the skin slippage and made it unrecognizable. The court asked, meaning the judge, I'm going to go ahead, stop you there, Ms. Silverman. We're going to
Deep
go
within
ahead.
the court transcripts from the preliminary hearing of singer-songwriter D4vd, real name David Anthony Burke, lie 20, 5 disturbing secrets that peel back the polished veneer of a rising music star to reveal a house of horrors in the Hollywood Hills. Secret 1, a decomposed, dismembered body was discovered in the front trunk of a Tesla Model X abandoned at a tow yard, the remains so ravaged by time that facial features were unrecognizable, skin slipping from bone. Identification hinged on a tiny tattoo, the letters sh inked on the right index finger, matching a mark known to belong to 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Secret 3. Investigators found at least 11 air fresheners scattered throughout the Tesla, some buried beneath masses of writhing maggots and dead flies in the very compartment holding her corpse.
So from the transcript, quote, I gathered some of the air fresheners that I found throughout the vehicle for a single photo. There were at least 11 throughout the vehicle. Question, and where were they within the vehicle? Majority of them were in the center console. They were also in the rear seats, and there were also some in the frunk area, meaning like the front trunk. So there were actually air fresheners in the front trunk area? Yes. Maria continues, quote, the top middle is a picture inside of the frunk, and it shows the insect activity and an air freshener. Anytime you talk about insect activity, gives you kind of stages, decomposition, how long the body might have been in there. Okay, and in terms of insect activity, are we talking about things like maggots? Yes. Flies? Dead flies? Yes, okay. In the photograph just below in the center where I see there is a red circle, what is it that you've circled here? That is another air freshener.
A chilling attempt to smother the stench of death. Secret 4, the autopsy revealed 2 penetrating wounds, a homicide ruling, and evidence that her body was dismembered with a power tool, quite possibly a chainsaw. And Secret 5, 2 chainsaws were recovered from David's garage, while a third remained mysteriously missing. Secret 6, David, only 21, had already amassed a staggering $10 to $11.5 million in gross earnings from his music between 2023 and 2025, a fortune that prosecutors say he feared losing if Celeste exposed their illegal relationship. Secret 7, before the body was even found, David transferred multiple properties into his mother's name, a move his financial manager admitted was designed to...
Now, DA Beth Silverman asked Gregor about David's earnings from things like albums and merchandising. Quote, question, how much money did the defendant generate between 2023 and 2025? Answer, I would say he's roughly earned close to $10 to $11.5 million in gross earnings. That's important because you can see we're talking about a huge amount of money here, possibly bolstering, supporting the prosecution's claim that David killed Celeste because he was worried about the impact Celeste could have on his reputation, his business, his career. Gregor also apparently testified about David's mother, Colleen, who was in charge of parts of his finances that involved paying bills. And we reported early on in the case that David had apparently transferred properties from his name to his mother's name. This is from the transcript. Quote, question, and why did you tell her she should move the properties from under the defendant's name since they were his homes purchased with his money to her in her name? Answer, the understanding was the Hempstead house was for the family, so we moved title. Do you remember testifying that the reason that you told her to do that was to protect the estate from any civil suit so the victim's family wouldn't be able to obtain those or get access to that money? I do recall, yes. So argument there.
Shield assets from any future civil suit by the victim's family. Secret 8, his iPhone lock screen displayed a topless photo of David and Celeste locked in an embrace, damning visual evidence when she was still a minor. Secret 9, text extractions showed the pair began communicating when Celeste was just 11 years old. And Secret 10, their sexual relationship allegedly started when she was 13 and he was 18.
Took the stand to break down what investigators apparently found on David's phone and in his iCloud account when they did extractions. And Detective Farrell also noted that David's lock screen on his iPhone was apparently a photo of him and Celeste in an embrace with neither wearing any clothing on the top half of their bodies. Remember, she was a minor. And as we go through this, I will just tell you my legal opinion is it is going to be very difficult, in my opinion, for the defense to argue away continuous sexual abuse of a minor charge when you have this potential digital evidence. It's one thing to say if there were graphic photos of, let's say, a minor on a device, and you could say, that's not my phone, someone put that there. But if you are allegedly in those photos with a minor, tough. And by the way, it came out during the course of this preliminary hearing that it doesn't appear mistake of age can be a defense. That even if Celeste had allegedly lied to David, that's not going to be a defense as far as we can see. That's what the prosecution asserted. I haven't seen case law to negate that. So I'll give you an example of the transcript. Quote, question by Ms. Silverman. And what was the subject matters that were discussed throughout the course of these text messages? Answer, they discussed past sexual liaisons, future sexual liaisons. They discussed sexual positioning. They discussed their relationship, the future of their relationship. They discussed how and when they could meet up. That was generally
a 5-year age gap that shatters any defense of teenage romance. Secret 11, their messages obsessively tracked her menstrual cycle, with David urging her to use a period tracking app and warning
about a specific text thread. Question. Okay. And the first text that we have here is the victim texting to the defendant currently, and then a misspelling of the word manifesting, my period because I refuse to have kids. Correct? Correct. And then a response from the defendant that says what? Did you miss your date? Okay. And at the top of the next page, same date, 11:25, 10:16 p.m. What does the defendant say to the victim? He says, you should start tracking. And what about at the text right beneath that? He sends a second message that says, use Flow. Do you know what that refers to? I believe it is a telephone application for women to track their period. He says, I know that's why you should start tracking. And then just beneath that, what does he tell her? And now that it's ovulation week for you, it's important. And then on the following page, let's jump down to this text here at 10:18 p.m. What does he tell her? I just need to make sure you're on top of your... And is there a response from the victim? Yes. What does she say? She said, if I'm pregnant, though, I'm not having it. Now, how old is the victim at this time? She had just turned 13 years old 2 months prior. Question by Ms. Silverman. How old is the defendant? They're talking about a pregnancy. She says, it's okay, though. Don't worry. Neither of us are capable of watching and taking care of the baby. It's for the best, no? And does the defendant respond? He does. What does he say? He says, yeah, I know. And a few hours later, also on January 8th, this is at 10:51 in the morning, does the defendant continue the conversation? He does. What does he say? He asks her, when you going to get it done? And does she respond? She does. She says, 2 days. And after that, does the defendant say anything to her? Yes. He says, also, my mother always told me to ask this question if I ever was in this situation. It's not insinuating anything, so don't get offended, please, but it is mine, right? And what is her response? Of course it's yours, David.
She answered, of course it's yours, David. Secret 14, after her abortion, David dangled a Balenciaga hourglass purse as...
Quote, he says, I'm thinking about your abortion gift. And what does she say? She says, I want Balenciaga hourglass purse. Later that same day in the evening hours around 5:17 p.m., does she send another message to the defendant? Yes. What does she say? She says, you ever just think we have whole A sex tape? And what is his response? He says, few of them, yup. And then what does she say with respect to that? With respect to that sex tape? She says, is no leak it, please. And what does he say? He said, N-word, and the word is capitalized, you, and the rest is lowercase, don't
a twisted gift, a luxury consolation for a terminated pregnancy. Secret 15. The couple had a name for their secret plan to spirit Celeste away from her family. Operation Awesome. And Secret 16, David's personal bodyguard, a man named Sheldon, was looped into the plot.
Pusher. Quote, on February 14th at 2:17 p.m., does the defendant send another text message to the victim? Yes. He says, quote, so explain me what you want to do. I tell Sheldon stop at stop sign and you make multiple trips to car. And does she have a response to that? Yes. What is that? First response is no. Then she follows it up with hell no. JS, just tell him to stop. Just tell him to the stop. And I believe it says sigh, and I believe it's a typo, and she meant sign. Okay. And then the defendant, does he ask her a question about this operation they're planning? Yes. What does he say? He says, so how are you going to carry heavy bag? And what's her response? Her response is, it's not going to be heavy if it's that small. And what does he say? He responds, nah, you're supposed to use the duffel along with whatever you were packing in last time and whatever is shortened to WTV. And I have to say, the text message threads that were shown in court varied from just vulgar to criminal charges, for example. So you go to the transcript. More quote question. David Burke tells Celeste, "How you going to say you feel distant when you've been pushing me away since the beginning of the year?" And then there's a crying, laughing emoji, and Celeste responds, "No, you haven't. If I see you with Asia one more time on either Paige's posts, etc., you hanging out with her, next to her, anything of that sort, I will make anonymous accounts you won't be able to avoid and leaking all that S I got on you." And Celeste is talking about leaking things online. Answer, that's what the text says, what it says, just like the other text, yes. And Celeste never said one word about going to the police and making any kind of complaint against David Burke.